Well, welcome to this video. Thank you for being here. Just want to say a couple things before we switch to Linda sharing her message with us. First of all, um, this video deals with child sexual abuse, and Linda made it plain beforehand and during the video in the recording that her intention was not so much to share the details of her abuse, but to talk about the culture and the mindsets that help make such things possible. And yet it's inevitable that she does talk a little bit about her own abuse. And so could be very triggering. If you are going to go ahead and watch this, just please be sure you're in a good place within yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or that you have very good support with you or easily available. Second, Linda was in full control of this entire process. The thought came up of someone else possibly sharing their abuse story, and that person mentioned Linda, and Linda and I got in contact. She was ready and been wanting to tell her story for some time. And so I gave her a number of different options, mentioned a couple different people that were like qualified professionals, licensed therapists and such to tell her story too. Because of our relationship over knowing each other for about around 30 years, probably, she wanted to tell me her story. I offered a person she knows that's professionally qualified to be on the recording with us. And Linda thought about that, and she felt that she's done a lot of her own therapy, a lot of her own work over the years, and she didn't feel she needed that, but it was an option. And she chose every part of this process. And kind of related to that, another point to make is at the same time, Linda and I were communicating. There's another lady who I was in communication with, and I encouraged her to tell her story. Not to tell me her story, but that's kind of where she came to. Well, yeah, I think I could say she got excited to tell her story, and she would tell it to me. And within probably 4 days, this other lady, we talked again about this idea, and she said, "You know what? No, I'm not ready." And this is a lady I deep respect for her, deep respect for all the hard work she's done. She's been in pretty intensive therapy and other self-help, self-work for over a year now. And still, she came down to it. She said, "No, you know what? I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this." And like and this video deals with abuse within the 2x2 church structure. And most of you watching this will be very familiar with that. Some of you won't be, and some things might not be clear. But how do I say this? And within our church community, it has become, I'm going to use the word popular in the last 2 years for victims to tell their story. And that is a very good thing. But it also comes with some dangers. It could be that people would want to tell their story before they're ready, be pressured to tell their story before they're ready. So no one is obligated to tell their story of abuse. Anyone who wants to tell their story of abuse, if you're thinking of that, be sure that you really are ready for that. And be sure that you have resources, and be sure that if anyone's suggesting you tell your story, assisting you in telling your story, you should be in full control at all times in the process. Thanks for being here, and we'll turn this over to Linda. Well, Linda, thanks for joining me here, and thanks for your courage and wanting to tell your story. And just for our viewers, I just want to go over, but I really appreciate what you said. Not so much wanting to go into the details of your your trauma, your abuse, but more speaking to the mindset and the culture that made it all possible. So we're here to hear whatever you want to share with us, Linda.
Okay, thank
you.
you.
You want to introduce yourself?
Okay, I am Linda Block, and up here in Alaska, but I grew up in California. And so I will tell you a little bit about my story, but I am not going to go into details of exactly what happened, because I do not want to trigger anyone who would listen to this. But I just want to encourage you, if in listening to this, you find some of it a little bit triggering, please remember that it's my story. It's not happening to you. You maybe did go through that. I'm not discounting that at all. But just remember, it's my story you're listening to. So the reason I am doing this is because after years and years of therapy, and still being silent as far as telling anyone else, I have now found my voice. And I'm taking the power back that was taken away from me. And this is one way of doing it. The other reason is because I want to help people to understand how they can protect their children. I was not protected at all. And I don't want to see this happening to any more children. So I was born into a family, second generation, who were going to meetings. And from the time I was 3 years old until about 8 years ago, Sunday morning meeting was in our home. And what stopped it was my mother passed away. And so the meeting was moved. For years, not only was it Sunday morning meeting, but it was union meeting and Wednesday night meeting, all in our home. The workers were in our home a lot. They got their mail in our home. They came there often to get ready for gospel meeting because the hall they used was nearby. And when I refer to the term workers, if some of you are not familiar with that, I'm referring to our ministers. And so they were in our home. They were there several times a week and for most of the year. And they often spent the night using my bedroom. And I slept either out in the living room on the sofa or in a folding bed in my brother's room. I used to say I was raised by workers, and in a sense, maybe yes. My very first memories were sister workers, and they were wonderful ladies. And I think they understood that things in our home were not very good. And they were very kind to me, and they loved me. And that's probably the only love that I felt as a little girl, was what came from them. And I professed when I was 12 because God called me and asked me to begin to walk with him. And then I became very troubled about the work. God was calling me into the ministry. And so I did go into the ministry, and I was there for 3 years. My abuse began when I was about 3 or 4 years old. I have very clear memories of my father molesting me. And all the years, probably even before that point, that I don't remember, but then all the years, basically even after I moved out of the house, but we made visits, and on on house, phone calls. There was verbal abuse and emotional abuse. And all my years growing up, there was physical abuse. My dad was a very violent man. He was a very angry man. And as my mother once said to me, he was the only one in our home who could get angry. If we showed any signs whatsoever that we might be angry, we were beaten. And so there was a lot of physical abuse. I didn't know to look for bruises, but I'm sure there were some. And I know from what's happening with my body now, with all of the pain and abuse did damage. And so there was also the sexual abuse that began with my dad. The sexual abuse continued into my early teen years. I was pregnant 3 times, and I will not talk about what happened, the result of those pregnancies, because it is very, very painful and probably will be until the day I die. But that does a lot of damage to a little girl's body. I was molested and raped by 3 brother workers, is beside my dad. And then I was also molested by a female several different times, including right in our home. And I will talk a little bit about that. I was also gang raped. And that's all I'm going to say. As a little girl, I used to have nightmares that I was being chased by a man, and he would almost have his hands on me. And I would wake up in a total sweat and panting, my heart racing, and I'd be sobbing. And that man was my dad. And horrible nightmares, night after night after night. It went on and on and on. I don't know for how long. So, how is it that this happened in a home where the workers were in and out constantly, and where there were meetings several times a week in our home, and we went to gospel meetings? So for some years, we were in 3 to 4 meetings a week. And, except when they were gone for preps. How can this happen? So in gospel meetings, we sat on the front row, and after the meeting, my brother and I would gather up the hymn books and help fold chairs and take them where they needed to go. And we were forbidden to talk to anyone. If we did, my dad obviously was watching us, because we got in trouble. So it was that don't tell attitude that was ingrained in us. We were to be good little children and don't tell. So I am using notes, so I keep kind of in order.
That's perfectly fine, Linda. Understandable. Thank you.
So I was an easy victim in our home. And one of the things was, you don't tell. And I was not allowed to say no, especially to the workers. Especially my father worshiped the workers. he treated them as if they were gods. And I was to treat them as if they were gods. And I believe they were, because that's how I was raised. And so to tell them no to anything was absolutely unthought of. In the way I was taught is the workers could do no wrong. Their word was the final word. They were God himself. So when Dan Hilton raped me, he read verses to me from the Bible that convinced me that, okay, this is what I have to do because the Bible says. And then he threatened me if I resisted him. I could not say no. I hated it, but I could not say no. And in my eyes, when I could separate from what had happened in the bedroom that night, he was this awesome God. And yet underneath, he is the only one of the workers that I nicknamed, which tells me that underneath, I did not respect him. But I pretended that everything was fine. He also told me that because of what I did with him, that I would go to hell. And I believed that well up into my adult years, until a wonderful, supportive, kind sister worker helped me to understand I was not the one who was going to go to a lost eternity.
Wow.
But even after professing, after being in the work and loving the work, I believed no matter what I did, no matter what it was, I was going to go to hell. And that was ingrained so deeply. And I don't even know yet if I'm completely away from that, but I'm definitely better than what I was. So in that way, he silenced me. There was no way I could tell. And I will just add that after I was married, had a child, I began to deal with what he did to me. And I did tell. I wrote him several letters, of which we have copies of, and he did admit to guilt, to that he did it. And I also wrote to the overseer at that time, and I never got a response ever.
Wow. Wow.
At all.
Linda, I'm
So
very, very sorry about that. I'm very sorry.
that's, and I've heard since that overseer, that was his typical way of dealing with anything that came to him about abuse. At this point in my life, I wish I had taken him to court, even though it would have been messy and I could not have proved anything at this stage in life. But it would have exposed him. But so there were two other brother workers who molested me, raped me. One of the molestations happened in the living room with my mother probably 15, 20 feet away around the corner in the kitchen. And he silently molested me. He held me in a very tight hug. I was totally trapped. And I was bewildered. Supposedly, this man loved me. No, that is not love. And please tell your children that. Later on, he was actually arrested for other things, sexual exposure, while he was in the work. So he was taken off the grid. Years later, as an adult, he moved up to where I am, and I did confront him face to face. And he then left the state. And I don't know where he is now. But that was a little bit of victory for me, because I confronted him and let him know I knew exactly what he did, and it was wrong. When I was 14, I attempted to take my life. And my dad apparently suspected it and followed me and stopped me. I will add that when I was a little girl, 5, 6 years old, I remember praying that my parents would die. And then I would cry because I knew that was wrong for me to wish that.
Wow.
We were kids, were never hugged, I did not feel loved. My dad used to tell me, and he didn't tell my brother this, but he'd tell me to put a plastic bag over my head and go out and play on the busy boulevard that was in front of our house. And then he'd laugh. And I think he meant it. I really think he did. He also used to tell me that if I tried to run away, nobody would want me, and that he would find me anyway. And I did try to figure out how I could run away. I did not care what happened to me. I just wanted to get away from the abuse. All of what my dad did was in the name of love. After he would beat me with a switch, and I mean beat, not spank, beat me with the buckle end of a razor strap, he would hold me and insist that I sit on his lap and tell me that he loved me. And he held me there until I told him I loved him. I did not, I hated him. But little by little, something in me was being killed. So okay, I have to, sorry about that. A phone call from doctor came in. He convinced me that I was worthless, that I was a bad girl, that I was unloved. That was a very strong message that I still battle today. So the workers I mentioned were in our home a lot. And so the bedroom that they used was at the opposite end of the house, where my mother would be in the kitchen. And she never thought to check on us, to be sure everything was safe and right. So we kids, because we loved the workers, after all, they were like God. And so we would be partly in their room. And I know specifically that I had no boundaries. They had no boundaries. And that left me an easy victim. When a child, when the first time they are molested, the protective wall that is around them just naturally is removed. And from then on, it is so much easier for other predators to come along and victimize children. And especially when a child is convinced they absolutely cannot say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I started to actually deal with this stuff, I remember telling my therapist, I must have had a sign on me that said, here I am, do what you want. I buried the abuse very deep. And when I went into the work, one of my companions said to me one time, I think you were abused. And then she continued to verbally and emotionally abuse me. The next year, my last year in the work, Dan Hilton was resting in our field. And he came to our gospel meetings and would sit in the back of the hall, staring at me as I tried to feebly preach the gospel story.
Oh, Linda.
I suddenly got sick with my belly swelling up as if I was 9 months pregnant. I walked the floor day and night. I could not eat. I began to pass out. I had no idea because I had blocked everything. It finally got to the point that I had to go home. And I saw doctors. Doctors found nothing wrong. A little bit later, after that, a few years after that, one doctor, when I was in the work, knew that I had been hurt, but I denied it. Later on, doctors told me that what I was experiencing was body memories. And indeed I was, when I finally could face it. That kind of damage to a child is permanent. Yes, you can get better. I live a very active, full life. I love God. I have a little tiny meeting in my home. A few older folks. But nonetheless, there's something in me that I feel totally inadequate. Not just the normal feeling. It goes far deeper than that. That kind of damage done to a child is so off the scale. We have to protect our children. If you are parents, if you're grandparents, if you're an aunt or an uncle, even a big sister, big brother, take care of those little children. Do not have brother workers stay in your home. I emphasize that. Do not. I was thinking last night that when we read in the New Testament, Peter and some of those others, they had homes that they went to. And when they were out preaching the gospel, I don't know where they stayed, but I don't know. But I know they had homes. Don't Don't let those brother workers stay in your home, please. Do not have a brother worker don't let them just stay with your children. I've said the 12-foot rule. They should be 12 feet away from your child.
Wow.
If they're sitting at your table, don't let your child sit beside them. Your child's going to want to. They're going to say, oh, here, sit beside me. No. The female who abused me, one of those times, was in the living room while a Spanish was being taught to all the friends in that area. The living room was packed with people. That female and I sat on the couch, and she proceeded to molest me on that couch, and no one saw. Or if they saw, they said nothing. And then the molestations got a whole lot worse after that in her home. So don't let your child sit next to a brother worker. Don't let them sit on the couch with a brother worker. Don't let them sit on their lap. No gifts. No secrecy between the child and that worker. No hugs. I couldn't tell you the hugs that I had that were trapping me, held me captive. I could not get away. And because I had no voice, I could not say no. I could not scream. I could not call out.
Mm-hmm.
No gifts, no errands with them. Don't go in the car with them. Make sure I cover all those things that I mentioned. Because I feel so strongly about that. Now, I am saying brother workers to this because we do have some wonderful men amongst us who are God's servants. But if they are true servants of God, they will not approach your children. They will not shake your children's hand. They will not pick up your children. They won't do it. But we do have a few women in our ministry who have sexually abused children. 12-foot rule. Teach your children they can say no. They can say no and mean it. They can say no loud and clear. They can scream. It doesn't matter if it's the worker in your field. It does not matter. Teach your children there are times to say no and to mean no. No means no with no exceptions. The shame and the guilt and the pain that a molested child grows up with and keeps for the rest of their life damages every part to the core. It makes having a meaningful relationship very, very difficult. It destroys trust. It is forever a dagger in the heart. And some of that abuse, and by abuse, I'm talking verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, spiritual abuse. It damages to the core. Yes, God can help, and God has helped me, or I would not be talking to you today. But the scars are forever there. One of the saddest things for me has been when I realized that I did not understand God as my father. Because father did not have a good feel to me. I have shed more tears over that one thing
Yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah.
But I will say now, because of our God being who he is, that has changed. I love my Heavenly Father more than I can ever tell you. And I know he loves me. And that's only been just the last couple of years. And now with things so exposed and all the corruption and all that's going on now, I find myself clinging tighter and tighter to my Heavenly Father because he loves me and he's safe. Please keep your little children safe. If you have a question about somebody, if you have a feeling something might be off, follow that feeling. Don't question it. Protect that child. I think I forgot to mention, if I say brother worker, but I think we should include sister workers too. They spend the night in your home. Bring your children into your bedroom to sleep for the night and lock the door. I've heard some say, well, we'll put in a baby monitor. No, they can dismantle that. They can go sneak around underneath that monitor so that it doesn't pick up what's going on in the room. That is not going to save your child. There's nothing going to save your child except behind locked doors. And I would say in the room with you. Who knows if they can pick a lock? Keep your children safe. They are precious. They're precious to you and they're precious in the eyes of God. So why have I done this? As I already said, I have found my voice. I want to help protect our little children. I want to take back the power that was taken away from me.
So Linda, I'm in awe. I've known you. I don't know. Do you remember us as when we were kids living up in Alaska? I I I,
Uh,
I remember you from when I moved back up there as an adult. So
yeah, as an adult, I don't think I knew you as a kid.
okay, well over 30 years.
Yeah.
And one thing I kind of, I mean, there's lots of regrets these days, but so many of us who labored there in and out, and I just, yeah, you know, I know it's not easy to talk about, but of all of us, yeah, I just wish we'd had some kind of training in how to observe and notice symptoms like yours. It showed up. Yeah, you were always very kind, but we always knew you were very sick, physically sick as well.
Yeah.
And I just wish we'd had some kind of training to know how to react to the things we saw when we were in the ministry. For those of you just listen, don't know, I spent 27 years. But anyway, yeah. Anything else you would like to say before we wrap?
Well, one thing that would have been a clue had had the brother worker had some kind of training, if we want to call it that, is back when my daughter was young. It was during that time period. It's been a number of years ago. I quit taking part in a meeting. I had never missed taking part, but I quit taking part in a meeting, and I didn't take part for a while. I hardly knew why. And then I started again, and then I quit again. The reason I did is because I felt so unworthy to have any part in that meeting. I felt so dirty, so unclean, so unworthy to have any part in the meeting. That was the reason I quit taking part.
Linda, when you say that, it brings chills, because people have told us that over the years. And I didn't have the information to think about what they were trying to tell us. Or maybe, maybe they weren't trying, but what they were saying. And not everyone that says that is saying what you were saying. But I think your case is common, far more common than we'd like to admit.
Yeah, it probably is.
Wow, man, I thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being such a voice for the children, and really, it's not just it's for the parents as well, and it's for all of us.
Yes.
We need to hear this. So I'm glad you found your voice.
Yeah, I'm just hoping this one little voice here in Alaska can be a help to even one person. It would be worth it.
Thank you. And thank you for trusting me with your story.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
It's not like a good novel you can sit down and just keep reading because you don't want to put it down. It's ugly.
Yeah.
It's ugly.
But there can be a lot of strength and beauty come from sharing in a good time. And I'll just stress again that we did talk. Anybody that's listening, we did talk several times, and Linda was certain of the way she wanted to do this, and she was certain that it was now time. And nobody ever has to share their story, and nobody should ever share their story until they are very ready. You have no obligation. No one has any obligation to share their story. But thank you for doing it, Linda.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.